For more than 4 decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran has presented itself as immovable. Built on repression, ideology, and fear, the regime survived wars, sanctions, assassinations, and repeated uprisings. Yet, at the end of December 2025, something changed. What began as localized unrest quickly evolved into what many now describe as the most serious threat to the regime's survival since 1979. On December 28, 2025, massive protests erupted across Iran. Within days, demonstrations had spread to 26 of the country's 31 provinces, from Tehran and Mashhad to Isfahan, Shiraz, Tabriz, and dozens of smaller cities. This was not a protest confined to students, intellectuals, or urban elites. It involved workers, shopkeepers, pensioners, women, oil workers, and even families of security personnel. But what made these protests unprecedented was not just their scale. It was their message. For the first time in years, chants were no longer cautiously framed around economic grievances or corruption. Protesters openly and directly targeted the very core of the regime, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei himself. Slogans such as "Death to the Dictator" and "Khamenei, step down" echoed through the streets, phrases that, until recently, almost guaranteed imprisonment or worse. This shift marked a psychological rupture. Fear, the regime's most powerful weapon, was visibly eroding, a nation crushed by economic collapse. At the heart of the uprising lies a brutal economic reality. Iran's economy, already weakened by years of international sanctions, has entered a state of near-total collapse. By late 2025, official inflation hovered around 40%, while food inflation exceeded 70%. For ordinary Iranians, this meant that basic necessities, bread, rice, cooking oil, meat, had become luxuries. The national currency, the Iranian rial, continued its free fall against the US dollar, wiping out savings and pensions almost overnight. A middle-class family that had once managed to live modestly now struggled to survive. Retirees who had worked their entire lives found their monthly pensions insufficient to buy groceries for a single week. Young Iranians, facing unemployment rates that unofficially reached catastrophic levels, saw no future at home. But economic hardship alone does not bring down regimes. What fueled the rage was the perception of injustice, corruption in plain sight. As ordinary Iranians sank deeper into poverty, the ruling elite appeared immune to suffering. Reports circulated of senior clerics, Revolutionary Guard commanders, and regime insiders transferring vast sums of money abroad, purchasing luxury properties, and shielding their families from the consequences of sanctions. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which controls large swaths of the Iranian economy, became a focal point of public anger. While the state pleaded poverty, IRGC-linked companies continued to profit from smuggling networks, oil sales, and shadow financial operations. To many Iranians, the message was clear. Sanctions were not starving the regime, they were starving the people. This perception destroyed one of the government's long-standing narratives, that external enemies were solely to blame. Increasingly, protesters argued that the real enemy was internal, the regime's weak response. Historically, the Islamic Republic survived uprisings through overwhelming force. The protests of 2009, 2017, and 2019 were crushed with mass arrests, internet blackouts, and lethal violence. Thousands were detained, hundreds were killed. But in late 2025, the regime hesitated. Security forces appeared disorganized. In several cities, police units withdrew rather than confront crowds. Videos circulated online showing soldiers refusing to fire or simply standing by as demonstrators marched past. This restraint was not born of compassion, it was fear. The leadership understood that a massacre on the scale of past crackdowns could trigger consequences far beyond Iran's borders. Instead, the government announced a so-called emergency relief package, a monthly stipend equivalent to about $7 per person. The announcement was met with ridicule and fury. Protesters mocked the offer in the streets, holding up signs reading, "Is this the price of our silence?" Rather than calming tensions, the measure confirmed how detached the leadership had become from reality. A fracturing power structure. Behind closed doors, signs of panic began to emerge. Reports suggested deep divisions within the regime itself. Some factions advocated harsh repression, while others warned that mass bloodshed could provoke international intervention or even internal collapse. The Supreme Leader, now elderly and reportedly in declining health, was said to be increasingly isolated. Trusted advisors urged caution. Others whispered that the regime's days were numbered. Even within the Revolutionary Guards, loyalty appeared less absolute than in the past. Years of economic strain, coupled with growing resentment from their own families suffering under inflation, eroded the unquestioned obedience the regime had long relied upon. The end of fear. Perhaps the most dangerous development for Tehran was not economic, military, or diplomatic. It was psychological. The protesters no longer believed the regime was invincible. Social media, despite censorship efforts, overflowed with images of massive crowds, burning posters of Khamenei, and women openly defying compulsory veiling laws. Each video inspired another city. Each chant emboldened another neighborhood. This phenomenon created a self-reinforcing cycle. The more people protested, the safer it felt to protest. History shows that authoritarian regimes rarely fall because of a single protest. They fall when enough people stop believing in their permanence. By early January 2026, that belief was crumbling across Iran, a regime on the brink. The Iranian leadership now faced an impossible dilemma: repress the uprising violently and risk triggering foreign intervention and internal mutiny, or refrain from force and allow the movement to grow. Neither option guaranteed survival. For the first time in decades, analysts openly discussed a scenario once considered unthinkable: the collapse of the Islamic Republic. And watching closely from abroad were global powers who understood what was at stake, not only for Iran, but for the entire geopolitical balance of the Middle East. In Washington, one man in particular was paying attention, and he was not known for restraint.